yachting that has spanned 2 decades. And in 2012, he was one of the first brokers in our industry to recognise the power of digital marketing. And he launched his very first and now wildly popular YouTube channel. Yachts for Sale produces and publishes dedicated yacht walkthrough videos and has done for the past 11 years. Now, fast forward to now, and David Seal has 3 dedicated yacht YouTube channels and has amassed amazing 70 million views and has an astounding 250,000 followers. He's also recently launched a course for aspiring brokers. He's the original yachting influencer, and today he'll be talking us through selling the Superyacht Sizzle. So please give a very warm welcome, everyone, to the one and only David Seal.
Thanks, Lucy. I think that hole there is for a bottle of water, isn't it? Yes. Can I see, by a show of hands, how many people here enjoy eating sausages? As I suspected, unless you're a vegetarian, most people love eating sausages. Now imagine that you're walking through a busy market. You're surrounded by the sounds and the smells of a market, the traders trying to sell their goods. Lovely piece of haddock, nice piece of cod. It's Billingsgate Market, by the way, at this point. The smells of fresh fruit and vegetable, and then through the air wafts into your nose the smell of somebody cooking sausages in a pan. You carry on walking a little bit further, and then you hear the sizzle of sausages in a pan. Before you know it, your feet have taken you to see if there's any free sample of sausage to eat because you're feeling hungry. My question to you is this: what is it that made you feel hungry? Was it the sound of the sizzle of the sausage, or was it that lovely smell of cooking sausages coming into your nose? What affected you the most? Science indicates that the smell of cooking food has a very strong effect on our digestive system. We actually want to eat when we smell food, which kind of makes a mockery of an English expression that's used in marketing all the time. Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. Have you ever heard that expression? Sell the sizzle, not the sausage. As if some market trader who has to sell a lot of sausages thinks, I'll cook a few in a pan, people will hear it, and then they'll come and buy it. That's not what he thinks at all. He thinks people will smell it, and then they want to buy and to eat sausages. It should really be sell the smell, not the sausage. The sizzle's got nothing to do with it. You can't sell sausages from the sizzle, but you can sell super yachts from the sizzle. And that's what we're going to be talking about in this part of the program, selling the Superyacht Sizzle. To understand what I mean by that, though, first of all, we need to understand a little bit about selling sausages and why it is that smell is associated with what we want to eat. We all know that when you cook something, you're basically applying heat to a substance and you're changing its chemical makeup. I remember when I went to school in England and I discovered that Johnny Horsfield's the same age as me, so he probably remembers the same thing. In our science lessons, we had a wooden desk with a little gas tap on it and some gas underneath the desk. Does anybody else have that in their school? Then we'd have what's called a Bunsen burner, and you'd put a rubber tube onto the gas tap, you'd turn it on, and you could control the flame. And the teacher used to explain to us that by applying heat, which is an energy, you turn a solid material to liquid and liquid to gas. And that's what's happening with a sausage when you apply heat to the pan. What's effectively happening is some of that sausage is becoming gas. It's becoming molecules of cooked sausage filling the air. Now, meanwhile, inside our nose, inside every human nose, there are between 10 and 20 million sensors. They're called olfactory neuron sensors. 10 to 20 million. If I'm not mistaken, the the population of Istanbul is 18 million people. That's like one Istanbul resident and all the residents inside your nose. Imagine how small those sensors have to be. But it doesn't end there, because each olfactory neuron sensor has between 30 and 40 tiny, tiny little hairs. They're rigid hairs and they actually just stick into the skin on the inside of your nostril. So hundreds of millions of microscopic rigid hairs, so small that when a molecule of cooking sausage touches them, they send a message to your brain. There's a part of your brain, it's called the olfactory bulb, and it's right at the front of your brain, in your frontal lobe. It actually corresponds with where your nose is. So the sensor doesn't have to send the message very far, it's right there. It does lots and lots of different things, but the basic primal function of your olfactory bulb is to send a message to the rest of your body: this is good, this is bad. That's what it does. Eat it, don't eat it. I remember one of my first ever jobs, actually, I think it was before I even left school at the age of 16. 3 times a week, I used to walk for 2 miles to a place in Wolverhampton called Warstones, where there was a fruit and veg shop. And my job, 3 times a week, early in the morning, was to meet the delivery of potatoes. They had 3 tons of potatoes delivered to the fruit and veg shop 3 times a week. And my job was to lift them from the front of the shop to the back of the shop so that they could be served to customers. Every so often, in one of these bags of potatoes, one of the potatoes had gone rotten. Has anybody here ever smelled a rotten potato? It is the most disgusting, vile smell you can imagine. I remember I used to have the sack of potatoes over my shoulder and I'd have to turn my head away because it was so disgusting. What was happening was molecules of rotting potato were getting into my nose. They were hitting an olfactory neuron sensor. It was going to the olfactory bulb, and it was saying, don't eat this. Do not eat this. In fact, there was a correlation with my digestive system, which would heave because I didn't want to eat it. Take a good potato, on the other hand, slice it up, put it in a deep fat fryer, and that's a smell that I want to eat. That's a smell that makes me feel hungry. Why? Because there's a direct neuron pathway between the olfactory bulb and your digestive system. That's why. It's a survival part of our senses. It's done that way so that, I mean, these days it's easy to find something to eat, but back in the day, you'd need to rely on your sense of smell to find food. And then when you find it, figure out whether it was good food or bad food. Actually, the human body even goes beyond that, because we have many, many receptors in our body called cannabinoid receptors. They're mostly in our brain, but they're all over the place. And when our energy levels get low, so we're hungry, our fuel tank is empty, hormones go to the cannabinoid receptors, and they're what are called neuromodulatory receptors. They actually modulate the neurons in our brain. They can either suppress them or they can accentuate them. So when we're hungry, our sense of smell actually becomes more acute so that we can survive, so that we can find food and identify good food. And it's not only about survival of the individual, by the way, it's about survival of entire species. Have you ever seen a dog in the street suddenly sniffing in the air? It's either found food or it's found a female dog on heat giving off pheromones, and that triggers a different response in the dog that arouses it, and it now literally wants to go forth and procreate with another dog, because the sense of smell is attached strongly to our sense of survival and to the need to survive as individuals and as a species. Now, I know that scientists do a lot of very serious work, a lot of experiments designed to better the human race, but I do believe that every so often they get bored and they want to have a bit of a giggle. One such example was a scientist who I think was in Germany, and he took some mice. I'm holding this mice by the tail, by the way. He made sure they'd had nothing to eat, they were really hungry, and he put one in a maze. Now, at one end of the maze was a lump of cheese, And at the other end of the maze was a female mouse giving off pheromones. Which way do you think the mouse went? It's in the middle of the maze. Which way do you think he went? Food. Yeah, absolutely right. He went for the cheese because that was the most immediate necessity he had to be able to survive. Were he a little bit smarter, of course, a little bit more highly evolved, he might have gone over to the female mouse, asked her out for dinner, had the cheese with her, and then back to his place afterwards. But that's not what happened. But the point of this is that our senses have a very strong effect upon our actions. The sense of smell will either repel you or attract you. It can either make you actually literally want to vomit or want to eat. That's how strong our senses are. It also illustrates that you can't sell a sausage from the sizzle. You sell a sausage from the smell. The opposite is true with super yachts. Nobody has ever bought a super yacht from the smell. Nobody's ever gone to the Monaco Boat Show, smells like an Azimut Grande, and bought it. You buy a super yacht from the sizzle, from sounds, from the power of our ears, the power of hearing. This is science. Our senses are very strong. So to understand how you sell a super yacht from the sizzle, we now need to understand a little bit about our sense of hearing and how that works. Now, whilst our nose and our mouth have a strong neural pathway to our digestive system and our stomach, our eyes and our ears are very closely associated with our heart. Now, what do I mean by that? When I talk about the heart, I'm talking about the heart as the seat of our emotions. When we think about the heart, we think about love, we think about fear, we think about feelings, about emotions. And those emotional triggers come from what we see and what we hear. Every time you hear something, of course, sound waves are passing through the air and into your ear. And the ear is a little bit like the nose, in as much as it relies upon tiny, tiny little hairs in the inner ear. But whilst the nose hairs, which are called cilia, by the way, are rigid, the hairs in your inner ear, of which there are about 3,500, are flexible. They actually move with sound waves. That movement sends a signal to the brain, and the part of the brain is called the amygdala. Side note on the amygdala, by the way, how many people here have had to learn English as a second or third language? How many people? Yeah, many, many. So you know that in English, when something's plural, you put the letter S after it. So it's one nose, two noses, one hotel, two hotels, one super yacht, two super yachts. One amygdala, two amygdala. There's no S on the end. I don't know why, but we do actually have two amygdala. And they're positioned quite deep in the brain, but very close to where our ears are. So once again, they don't have far for these sensations to pass by. Now the amygdala, rather than having a strong neural pathway to the stomach, it has a strong neural pathway to two glands which are at the base of our back, just above the kidneys. Does anybody know what glands we have just above our kidneys? It's the adrenal glands. You know when you feel like you're in love, or you're going to see somebody you're in love with, that feeling of excitement, a lot of that is actually adrenaline that gives that sensation. It's a lot of other things as well, but adrenaline has a big part in our feelings. And I want to give you just a few examples of how that works in reality and the power what we hear has. The first example is with regard to the airplane industry, because I think that most of us here, probably everybody, flies regularly. When I fly, I try to get a seat by the window. There's two reasons for that. One is I like to look out the window. The other is I try to fall asleep, and I know that if I'm by a window seat, I can kind of put my head up against the inside of the fuselage, close my eyes. Imagine that you're doing that. You're on an aircraft and you've closed your eyes. So now you're without the sense of sight. Sound waves are coming through the air, hitting those little hairs, sending a signal to the amygdala. The most prominent sound wave, of course, is the sound of the engine, right? So that, And all that your brain is trying to do is understand what's going on. So while you're hearing the engine, it's reassuring you that everything's okay. Maybe the lady next door to you coughs. You recognize that as a cough. I hope she put her hand over her mouth, COVID, but you recognize it as a cough. A baby starts to cry. You know what that is. It's annoying, but you know what it is. Then all of a sudden, bang, a huge bang. That's not supposed to happen. That sends a signal to your amygdala that says, what the hell is going on? So immediately it needs another sense, that of sight. And can you imagine if that happened? If you're on a plane, there was a huge bang, immediately your eyes would open. That's your brain saying, give me more information, what's happening? You look out the window and one of the wings is on fire, the engine's on fire. You feel the aircraft all of a sudden moving and going downwards. The amygdala sends a signal to the adrenal glands, which immediately flood your body with adrenaline. And we all know that adrenaline is the hormone that's associated with fight or flight. Have you heard of that expression? Fight or flight. There's no more flight, that's for sure. You're going down. There's no point fighting, but you're so full of adrenaline that people start to scream, help, wail, cry. What's happening? Scientists call amygdala hijack. Amygdala hijack. Your amygdala has just hijacked your frontal lobe. Now, does anybody know what the frontal lobe of your brain is used mostly for? Well, your frontal lobe is used mostly for reasoning. It's what's associated with literally your thinking. You're trying to figure out a resolution to a problem, social interaction. That goes out of the window with amygdala hijack. That's why people, what's the point of screaming when the plane's going down? It's not going to help, is it? In any way, shape or form. But you've got amygdala hijack. Then what happens is after the adrenaline, a substance called cortisol is emitted into your body. Now, it's the cortisol that makes your heart beat more fast and, interestingly, makes you start to breathe deeply. Now, why is that? Why does your body do that? Well, the frontal lobe relies upon oxygen to function, and it's your body trying to regain control of your thinking by flooding your frontal lobe with oxygen and trying to bring it back into the equation again. So without a doubt, sounds have a very strong effect upon us. I'll give you another happier example, and I'll make this a very quick one. Still with the aircraft industry, Virgin Airlines, during the beginning of the pandemic, they realized how people were missing their flights, they were missing their vacations actually. And at the time, there was a trend on YouTube called ASMR. That's audio sensory modulatory reaction. And it's a science that understands that certain noises produce a sensation of tingling in our body. Some people, strangely enough, I don't, but some people love the sound of long fingernails on a wooden table. And there was a whole YouTube videos of just literally tapping fingers, and people would go to sleep to it. The most bizarre one, which was very popular, was the sound of a brush combing long hair, that kind of static noise that comes from hair. People love it. They get a tingling feeling from it. And Virgin Airlines picked up on that, and they did a whole advertising campaign using nice sounds that made you feel comfortable. The clunk of a seatbelt on a plane, the tinkling of the drinks trolley. As far as vacation goes, who wants to guess what the most relaxing sound on vacation might be? Did somebody say waves? Whoever said waves, Johnny? You're absolutely right. It was the ripple of waves on a beach. Sound has a profound effect upon us. I want to give you another example, this time language. And language is a very interesting topic. From an early age, we learn to move our mouth and our tongue and our throat and make these unique sounds that travel through the air, hit the little flexible hairs in our ear, go to the amygdala, and the person receiving them understands what we're trying to communicate. But words are very powerful. Imagine that you finish the Superyacht Summit. You go back to your loved one, to your partner. You sit down and they go, how was the Superyacht Summit? Oh, fantastic. David Seal, amygdala, frontal lobe. And they go, they say, shut up. I need to tell you something. Me, and your best friend are in love and we're having a baby. Get used to it. It's only sounds. It's only sound waves hitting the hairs in our ear, sending a signal to the amygdala. But if ever something's going to give amygdala hijack in our brains, that's it. Because our brain is trying to make sense of what's around us. And all of a sudden, our future's in doubt. Our past was in doubt. Why we waste our time? How could we not see that? And before you know it, you've picked up the television remote control, thrown it against the television, has absolutely no practical benefit whatsoever, but you're undergoing amygdala hijack. That's the power of words. On the other hand, if you sit down and they say, you know, I really miss you. I know it's only been one day at the summit. I know why I'm looking at Malcolm. I don't look at Lucy. They say, you know, I really miss you during the summit. It's only been one day, but it's just made me realise that I don't think I could live without you. I really, really love you. Now that has a whole different effect. Different hormones are emitted. That feeling of happiness, hopefully, of happiness, of content, of having made the right decision. Words are very, very powerful. The last example I want to give is the most mystical of all sounds, music. Scientists don't totally understand why we love music so much. I remember when I was a kid hearing that Adolf Hitler in the Second World War used music to try to stir the troops to go into battle. So I thought, I'm going to research that to see if that's true. I really wish I hadn't. In the 10 minutes of reading I did, what I discovered about the use of music in the concentration camps in the Second World War was so disturbing. I wish I'd never read it. Not that music can be blamed for the horrors of the concentration camps, but music was used to help people to do some absolutely horrific things. Music as well mostly has a very positive side. We know that, and this was the most difficult part of the presentation to research, to be perfectly honest. Not because there's a lack of information, but there's an abundance of information that's actually quite inconclusive at the end. But what scientists do understand is that our brain is always trying to figure things out. That's what it's there for. And our brain loves trying to predict stuff. And music is like an exercise for our brain that sends neuron signals all over the place, to the hippocampus, to the back of the brain, the front of the brain, the adrenal glands. It triggers memories. And it's thought by scientists that that activity of the brain is remarkably satisfying to us as human beings. But you don't need me to tell you that. Everybody in this room has a favourite artist, a favourite composer, a favourite band, a favourite singer. Everybody has pieces of music that they listen to that bring back happy memories, that put a smile on their face, that makes them sing. Scientists don't need to be able to fully understand it for us to believe the power that music has. It's thought to actually go back to the beginning of civilization as being the one way that when early humans met each other, they could communicate in a happy way. The one thing they had in common, even if it wasn't language, was that they could all enjoy a beat and some very primal music. So how does that help us to sell super yachts? I firmly believe that the decision to buy a super yacht comes from two organs in the human body, from the heart and from the mind. And those two organs have to find an agreement between each other. First of all, you have to win people's hearts. People have to love the yachts that they're looking at. They might love it just because it's an aesthetically beautiful yacht. I mean, I look at Bilgin's Tatiana, for example. For me, the design of that yacht is one of the most beautiful designs I think I've ever seen in my life. It's a yacht to fall in love with. It might be that the yacht buyer loves the idea of cruising the world, exploring, going to the Northwest Passage, Fiji, Tahiti, Vietnam, Alaska. And they look at Bearing yachts and they go, I think I could do that in a bearing yacht. So they fall in love. It might be that they just love the idea of being all together with their family, watching the grandchildren swim in the sea, spending quality time with their kids for 2 weeks, sleeping under the same roof, eating with each other and sharing their experiences. And they look at Sirena yachts and they say, oh, I could do that. They need to love it. Then the mind kicks in after they've fallen in love. And they start to rationalize the whole thing. And they think, yeah, okay, but if I'm going to spend 10 million, 20, 50 million, what else is on the market that I could get for the same price? Maybe I could get more boat for the same price here or there. And what about the crew? How many crew? So now all of a sudden, the mind is rationalizing. And they need to be able to find an agreement. Now, I can do nothing as a marketeer about the mind. That's the job of naval architects, to build better hull designs with better range and more volume. It's up to the shipyards to be able to give good warranty and honour that warranty. It's up to lawyers to be able to do good contracts which are favourable to both. That is not the job of a marketeer. The job of a marketeer is to get people's hearts so that they fall in love, so that there's a temporary amygdala hijack with the client. There'll never be an amygdala hijack so great that somebody comes to a boat show, falls in love with the boat and buys it there and then. That would be the great train robbery of amygdala hijacks. But at the very least, as marketeers, we want people to fall in love with our product so much that they make an appointment to go to the shipyard, that they agree to bring their partner back to take a look at the yacht, that they agree to go on to the next phase. How do we do that? We tend to be quite self-deprecating in the yachting industry. We'll talk about the yachting industry being light years behind other industries, for example. I don't agree with that in marketing. I worked for 10 years for a yacht builder, and the last 20 years nearly in yacht brokerage. And I look at brands such as Burgess, Wyco, Edmiston, who are absolutely cutting edge in the marketing that they do, in their branding. They will do a video of a yacht that is so beautiful, it defies belief. They'll spend time finding the best possible location, crystal clear waters, lovely rocky outcrops. They'll ask the captain to keep doing little blasts on the bow thruster so the yacht's at the right angle with the sun shining on it. They'll spend days sometimes with the crew making little refinements here and there so they've got a soft focus on an orchid looking through to a beautiful sandy beach. They spend so much time on the visual aspects of superyacht sales, and my point is we need to really strongly consider the effect of the audio of the marketing that we do, because the power of our hearing is so strong. It touches the heart, it reaches the heart. And if all we're doing is worrying about what people see, we're missing quite literally half of the picture. Now, there are a few ways that we can do this. And again, I'm going to use the same three examples: music, sound, words. Music's an easy one. I remember this was years ago. I was asked to do kind of a consultancy for a yacht builder, and I need to tell you who the builder was because it's very relevant to the story. It was Palumbo, who at the time did not own ESA, but they were building under the Columbus brand. You might remember that they built two 40-metre sport hybrids called the Columbus 40 SH, and they asked me to take a look at their marketing. So what I did was I took a video that they'd got of the Columbus 40 SH. It was a beautiful video, but it had got very basic music on it. I took the music track off and I put a different track on. Now bear in mind that Palumbo are based in Naples. They're in the very heart of the port of Naples and the owners are Neapolitan. There's a song which every Italian in this room knows very well. And the song is called Caruso. Caruso was an opera singer in the early 1900s, and in Italy he never had any success. They didn't want to know him, so he went to New York, and he became one of the biggest names in opera in New York at the turn of the 20th century. The song Caruso is set where he's come back to Naples to die. It's set on his deathbed, overlooking, as the Neapolitans say, La Baia di Sorrento. He's looking out at the Bay of Sorrento. and he's singing to his daughter, and he's telling her how much he loves her. In fact, the song repeatedly says, "Ti voglio bene, sai, ti voglio tanto, tanto bene." He's saying, "I love you so much, I love you so, so much," as he's dying on his deathbed. I started to play that in the room. I looked up. There was not a dry eye, not even mine. As a matter of fact, Pino, who's one of the partners there, he looked, and he's a real man's man, he looked at me and he went, like, turn it off. It was so emotional. Now, if we know, and we all do know, that music has such a profound effect upon our emotions, surely our choice of music in marketing should be just as curated as the visual aspects of our marketing. If we spend days and days and days to try to get a yacht look perfect, we should be spending days and days and days to find exactly the right music for that video. From my experience, the videos I have that have been most viewed are the ones that we spend most of the time trying to find the right music to go along with the images. What about random sounds? It's kind of interesting that about a month ago I was in St Thomas filming a charter yacht, a Christensen, and last week I had the first draft of the video for my review. And I'm very, very lucky because in my team, Slava, who's here, and another guy called Yarek have both got significant experience in television and film, and they've brought a lot of that experience with them. And I was looking at this video and speaking to Yarek, who's the chief editor, and I said, you know, it's fine, it's good. I don't know what it is, but there's something missing in this video. And he said, I'll tell you what's missing. Sound. The sound of the birds, the sound of the sea, the sound of... And so funny enough, this morning I downloaded the revised video and I looked at it, and now when I'm sitting on the beach talking to the charter manager, you hear the ripple of the water, you hear the wind through the trees, you hear the birds. When you watch the footage of the chef in the galley, you can hear his knife chopping things up. There's so many little sounds. There's footage there of kids playing in the water. You hear the kids squealing with delight. You hear the splashes. And suddenly I'm there on the yacht, and it's turned what was a mediocre video into a real all-encompassing sensory experience that I feel that I'm on the yacht. Little details like sounds make such a big difference. What about words? I'm going to take a moment to talk about words because I've noticed that more and more people are understanding the value of talking on video. It's not for everybody. A lot of people hate talking to a camera, but more and more people are making an effort to do so, and that's really good because words are important. But choose your words carefully. By that, I don't mean go to a dictionary or a thesaurus. I mean, think about the target for your marketing. If you are targeting your video for existing clients, you've already won their hearts. You've already got their amygdala. So you want to aim for their frontal lobe. You want to give them good reasons to buy a yacht. You need to use technical details. But that's not the case for most marketing campaigns. Most marketing campaigns are actually to try to introduce new clients to you. So use words which are going to touch the emotions of people. Don't go into technical details. They have time to get the technical details once they've had their amygdala hijack and they've come to your shipyard to talk to you. The whole point of marketing is to win their hearts. So use words which help them to imagine the pleasure of being on board a yacht. Marketing has become more science-driven as the years go by. And most companies, whether they're building yachts, whether they're brokerages, if they give services, will pay considerable amounts of money to agencies that will help them with SEO, with understanding the algorithm of Google, the algorithm of YouTube, with links and backlinks. And then the other day somebody was talking to me about link juice. I have no idea what that is. It's probably a very good thing. It's all science-based. But what about neuroscience, which is such a more powerful science? What about the effect that what we see and what we hear has upon our hearts? There's no point driving traffic to our website if when people get there, they're not grabbed by their heart and they don't want to buy the products that we have. In conclusion, I am convinced that more people would buy super yachts if they just had the chance to go on board one for a day or for a week. Would you not agree? So many people have eventually been convinced to charter a yacht, and they love it so much they end up buying one. Realistically, it's impossible to get all of our potential clients to actually have that experience. That's why it is so important that when we market yachts, we try to give people the closest thing to the experience of being on board that we possibly can. We try to encompass them so that all of their senses are engaged and so that they really feel that experience of being on board a yacht. To do that, it's not enough just to sell the Superyacht site. We have to also sell the Superyacht Sizzle. Thank you very much. So, any questions at all? No questions about cooking sausages, about mice? No? Excellent. Thank you very much.